All right, guys, so weather is one of those hot topics that a lot of guys talk about when it comes to killing mature bucks. Paying attention to cold fronts, high barometric pressure, the first northwest wind after a bunch of souths, the first south after a bunch of norths, just a wind switch. There's a lot of different things that get talked about. It's something that you should be thinking about when going out hunting. We've had other videos in the past talking about woodsmanship and how that's also important. In that weather doesn't matter as much if you're good enough at finding deer, if you're good enough at scouting deer, if you truly know how to use the skill set that, hunters used to use back then, before there was apps and before there was other things. If you have those skills, the weather shouldn't matter as much. Obviously, we're always factoring in weather, trying to turn this whole deer hunting thing into a science as much as we possibly can, so that we can figure these animals out at the end of the day. There's no one thing that's ever going to help you figure them out perfectly. These are wild animals, and it's as simple as that. And that's what makes this deer hunting thing fun. But I do believe there are a couple, and especially one topic that I don't ever hear people talk about, and maybe it is talked about in small groups, small circles, that I think can definitely affect deer movement. When we're talking about weather patterns. Now, it's not the cold fronts, it's not the high barometric pressure, it's not the low barometric pressure, it's not the moon phase, it's nothing like that. It's humidity. Humidity, in my opinion, definitely makes an impact on deer movement. And why do I say this? So for the past couple of years, I've been lucky enough to live in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky is one of the top states in the country for whitetails. It is a hard state to hunt. I mean, to a certain extent as well. You're dealing with snakes, bugs, poison ivy on every tree. It's one of those states that can be challenging, but nonetheless, the caliber of deer there is absolutely world class. The downside, another one of the downsides, besides the snakes, the bugs, and those other things, is the amount of humidity that you get in the state of Kentucky. The humidity could easily range in the 90th percentile day after day after day after day. So how does that affect your deer movement? Well, when you're dealing with humidity, you ultimately are dealing with a heat index of a higher temperature when you're dealing with a higher humidity. So when you're dealing with that higher humidity, the deer are feeling the feels like temperature, and that feels like temperature tends to be much higher on those days in which you have higher humidity. You and I don't like spending time out in the woods in those days, and quite frankly, I don't believe any other mammal is overly active if they don't have to be on those days either. So factoring in the humidity, it's another one of those things. It's not going to be necessarily a make or break. Maybe it might be on your hunt, but it's one of those things you should definitely pay attention to and look at if you're going to be looking at everything else. If you're going to be looking at your barometric pressures, you're going to be looking at your weather fronts, your 10-day forecasts, your cold fronts and the wind switches. Humidity is not a bad thing to throw into that group of things to look into. Different research topics or different pieces of information to pay attention to. It's not going to hurt anything. And I definitely think, especially in states that reach super high humidity, you're going to see a difference between the movement on those days versus the low humidity days. Now, like I said earlier, woodsmanship is super important to me. It's one of the skills that I believe in the most. And I believe that you should be able to find deer no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the weather. And at least having that mindset will allow you to be a better hunter and figure things out. But nonetheless, if you pair that with these apps that are out there that have the algorithms that tell you when to hunt, and you truly take time to understand them and put all the different pieces of the puzzle together, and you add humidity to it and maybe something else that you might figure out, it's only going to help. It's only going to allow you to do a little bit more research and learn whether it does or doesn't make a difference in your area. Living in a state like Kentucky where the humidity varies, in a large degree, and especially even in states like Wisconsin or up north, Michigan, there's a lot of different states. Paying attention to that humidity might be the ticket when it comes to killing your next buck, especially if you're one of those guys who likes to wait on a cold front. Relative humidity might make a difference as to the feels like temperature for those bucks out in the wild. So like I said, nobody likes to spend time in high humid climates or anything like that. Nobody likes to move, nobody likes to run around if they don't have to. So next time you're headed out to the woods, guys, it might not be a bad idea to check and see what that humidity's at.